This is the Dr. Katherine Albrecht Show.
Raise a signal flag on a bare hilltop. Call up an army against Babylon. Raise a signal flag on a bare hilltop. Call up an army against Babylon. Wave your hand to encourage them. Wave your hand to encourage them. As they march into the palaces of the high and mighty. I, the Lord, have dedicated these soldiers for this task. Yes, I have called mighty warriors to express my anger. Yes, I have called mighty warriors to express my anger. And they will rejoice when I am exalted.
Hi there. Happy Thursday. Dr. Katherine Albrecht here. I am both live on, I'm live in all of my different places that I'm live here on YouTube. We're going to be trying to set up a Rumble live stream as well that will also go out. And if people have other suggestions of places that it might be a good idea for me to be broadcasting, let me know. I would be interested to know. If you go to my website, katherine-albrecht.com, there in the pull-down menu if you're on your phone, or in the menu on the left if you're on a computer, a desktop with a big screen, you can see at the very bottom of it, there is a message me link, and those go straight into my inbox. I check for those all the time. I do my level best to try to reply to them and say thank you for reaching out. It's been really delightful in recent weeks to hear from a number of old friends, people who used to listen to my show back in, 2008, 2010, 2012. It's great to hear from you guys, and somehow you're finding me again, so it's wonderful. And on YouTube, even though I haven't really announced the YouTube channel much or said much about it at all, and half the time I'm not even there, I'm already up to close to 150 subscribers. So let me know when you think I'm ready for prime time, and I will announce it to my 10,000 Facebook followers. I apologize if you're one of them because I don't post on Facebook, but I'm going to start. I'm going to do my best to start. So I have so many different irons in the fire, so many things going on. If you are a longtime listener to the show, or if you've been listening the last couple of months, you might be wondering what in the world has happened to Katherine's book? Because I used to come on the show, and pretty much every day I would have content of things that I'd researched and been thinking about, and important topics that I had delved into, whether they were related to history, such as the Industrial Revolution. I'm not even sure if I've shared my insights on that with you yet, or whether they were insights into the fact that the World Wide Web, or www.http:// all the web stuff that came out in the early 1990s, actually initiated at CERN in Switzerland, the high-speed underground super collider that some people are saying, and I may be one of them, I'm not sure, has actually begun tearing up the fabric of our reality and our timeline even. That was actually started by Tim Berners-Lee. Now, we all know, well, not we all, but those of us in technology know that Tim Berners-Lee was the guy who took the DARPA-based internet and made it available to regular people on our computers through this thing called the World Wide Web. I was a graduate student, I've told the story before, but I was a graduate student at Harvard, and in one of my classes in technology, was it STS? No, that's MIT. My program was TIE, Technology and Education, and in my Technology and Education, one of my courses, there, I don't know why I'm thinking of this, but almost everybody in the room was left-handed in that class. I don't know. That was just like a random realization I just had. There were like 25 people in that class, and I think 18 of us were left-handed, including yours truly. I'm very, very left-handed. But so that class, I think, attracted a different kind of person from the get-go than your typical education psychology major who was at Harvard. And so in our technology and education, I think it was math and science or STEM education, something like that. That was the very first time that I ever saw a web page. And back then, we didn't call them web pages. We didn't say, go to somethingorother.com, KatherineAlbrecht.com. We said, go to http://www.Katherine-Albrecht. It doesn't matter if it's uppercase or lowercase, .com. So it was a long thing. But this was long before even that. None of us had even heard of this thing called the web. And I remember going into class one day and we were all presenting our projects. My project for that class was, what did I do for that class? I think I did educational software. I think I did a piece of educational software that I had programmed because that's why I went to grad school in the first place. Wound up not doing that, but that's why I was there. The person who came in who had been working on a web page, which is not what we called it, I didn't even understand what I was saying. I really didn't. We had an overhead projector, and this would have been 1993. And on the overhead projector, they brought up a screen that looked like any other slide that you would create using, PowerPoint. And on the screen, it had our little Harvard Graduate School of Education, our GSE logo, and some stuff underneath. And some of it was blue and underlined. And I remember thinking, that looks really messy. That's not how you if you're gonna do that, you probably should maybe make it black, or you don't underline it and make it bold and change the color. What's going on there? So I just remember my first thought on seeing it, and then they clicked on one of those links. I didn't know, one of those underlined things that was incorrectly underlined, and a whole other page popped up. And I remember this is a thought that I had: who's ever going to use that? Can you imagine? I just thought, who in the world is ever going to, and they were trying to explain that you can put a word there and you can click the word and you can go to another page. And I'm thinking to myself, well, that would ruin the continuity. Why would I want to go to another page in the middle of being on this page? I would want to get to the end of this page, and maybe then at the bottom, if you want to put a list, a little box with some of the terms that you discussed. Well, at that point, after I've read the whole page and after I'm oriented to what it is, well, then I'd click, then I'd look. And so I remember I want to get back to this because there's two things I want to remember about my first introduction to digital communication through the internet. And I think there's something we can learn from this. And if you can remember back to your first exposure as well, I think we can all think kind of about how did we first see this? So my first thought on seeing this was, first of all, what am I even looking at? Like, wow. My second thought was certainly not, this is going to change the world. I did not have any clue that would be happening. The thing, though, and I remember having a conversation with my then boyfriend, who was a satellite engineer at MIT, who was very into this web stuff and using it over at MIT. And he was explaining it to me, kind of mansplaining, kind of like a little lady, let me tell you how it is. And I felt like I probably needed to have it mansplained to me, because I remember at that point, I would have been in my mid-20s, I would have been like 26, 27 at that point. And I remember just looking to him with what felt to me like wide-eyed wonder, as someone who had all of this knowledge and insight and wisdom was explaining this very complicated thing to me. And he was explaining to me that this World Wide Web, this new HTTPS thing, which none of us had ever seen before, was going to enable us to link information together in a way it had never been linked before. And even then, I kind of argued with him. I remember this conversation. We're walking down the street, and I remember saying, why would I want that? Like, why would I want that? Now, here's why this is on my mind today. It's on my mind today because now we take it for granted. It's like the air we breathe. We no longer stop to ask ourselves, should we have phones? Should we have cars? Should we have electricity? Like, there are certain things that you just don't even ask yourself, especially the things that have been there before you were born. The things you were born into are no longer even technology. They're just background noise. And if you can get away with in putting a technology into a society long enough that new people born into the world after that technology exists and then growing up into adulthood, then you pretty much got it nailed. That technology will not be going anywhere. It is pretty much locked in place. The discussions that I've been having just in the last couple of days with some people who I think have a more realistic touch on or view of what's going on in the world, perhaps, than I do on certain things regarding the difference between a website or people who are raised, educated, and weaned, I suppose, or have their first solid food be the web, and even more than that, I guess, be their phones. Because when I'm thinking the web, I'm thinking sitting down on a desktop computer. In fact, back in 1993, I didn't even own a computer. We had to go to the computer lab. I remember staying there. They would stay open all night, the night during finals week. And I remember sitting there at 4 a.m, slamming coffee in a room in the computer lab with other students, because that's the only place we could type our papers. All right, stay tuned. I have more to say on this. I'll be right back.
Why are most email programs free? Companies use them as bait to lure people into their system so they can scan their data and sell them to advertisers. It's like a hotel giving out free rooms so they can film people sleeping and then sell the video. You'd never agree to that. StartMail restores your privacy. No one but you sees your sensitive data, and it costs less than a postage stamp a week. StartMail.com. It's email you can trust. Your email is your business, but if it's spied on, hacked, or intercepted, it can fall into the wrong hands. The solution is encryption, a high-tech way to scramble your data so no one can read it. For years, only the technical elite could use this powerful tool until StartMail came along. StartMail not only lets you encrypt the email you send, it encrypts your entire account. Encryption. It's just one more way StartMail.com keeps you safe.
Hi.
To the Lamb. Don't be discouraged, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will hold you up. I will hold you up.
All right, I'm back.
For I've chosen you.
So let me think back to this moment, because I just had a very long and interesting conversation with someone I think the world of and think deeply of their views about the value of books. And I was put on the spot, and it was kind of, it was a wake-up call to me. The question that I was asked is, Katherine, when was the last time you sat down and read a book? And I said, oh, well, I'm writing my book, and I'm on Anna's archive all the time, and I'm looking at all these books, and I have downloaded probably 75 books, and I listen to some of them on tape when I'm driving. Not on tape, but I have a program called, what's my program called? I don't have my phone here, I would tell you. But anyway, I have a program from long before the AI era that reads text to me. It's not a very exciting voice, but it reads it. And I listen to it when I'm in my car, and I read my Bible. And I've gone through, so I'm like 75 books. Well, can you name one of them? I'm thinking, Jacques Ellul, The Technological Society. All right, well, how much of that have you read? Well, I've skimmed the whole thing beginning to end. Okay, well, that's not what I asked. When was the last time you sat down with a book, not on your phone, not being read to you by a computer voice, not in a PDF that you downloaded, but when was the last time you sat down with a book that was paper between your fingers and sat down without your phone in your hand and read a book? And I was like, well, in Pastor Anthony's class, I had a book for the leadership class, and he asked me what was it called. I was like, who wrote it? Okay. And if truth be told, I did not read the entire book. I was supposed to read one chapter every week for the class, but I'm so busy that I wasn't doing it. I would skim the chapters. I read a couple of the chapters beginning to end, but I didn't sit down and read that book cover to cover. And so I had to ask myself, here's the admission that I want to make. And if this is ringing true for you as well, if you're of my generation at least, where we valued reading books, then maybe this is a question we have to ask ourselves. But I asked myself, when is the last time I read a book? And here's the thing. So my first answer, I have to admit this is kind of interesting, and I think you'll get something out of it. So 3 nights ago, Sunday, what is today? Today's Thursday, so on Sunday. On Sunday, I went to the Y. All right, the Y is not open on Sunday, but if you have your little card on your phone with your barcode, you can hold it up under the reader and it will pop the door open. So there are a lot of gym people who go after hours, go early in the morning, go on Sundays. And as I was walking towards the door to do this, trying to pull up my card on my phone, I realized my phone was at 1%. And I said, uh-oh, is it going to stay? Is it going to still be alive by the time I get to the door? And sure enough, it went black. So now I'm standing at the door, and it's cold here in Michigan. And a big gym guy, big brawny gym guy comes up with his gym bag, and he's walking over, and I say, could you let me in? He's like, oh, sure. Right. So he lets me in. So now I'm in the gym, but my phone is dead, and I don't have a charger with me. And I put my stuff in the locker, put my jacket in there, I work out, and then I leave. And when I get home, I'm like wanting to order something or do something. I'd look something up. I'm like, where's my phone? Well, long story short, I had left my phone at the Y. And the Y was locked. It was not till the next day I realized. It wasn't until Monday. So on Sunday night, now here's the point of my story. Sunday night, I don't have my phone. I think that I might have left it at the supermarket because I also went there too. So I get on my phone, on my computer, and I have a voice over IP, a online phone program. Excuse me. And I look up the number and I punch it into my thing, and I have my big old microphone in my headset because that's the only way I can use the sound system on my home studio computer. And I call up, and I can't even get through because they no longer even provide phone numbers. It was Aldi, the discount supermarket. And I've been able to call them in the past over things that were spoiled or questions. But now you get a corporate recording, and it says, due to our cost-saving measures to keep your costs low, we no longer give out individual store numbers, and we don't answer the phone. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to have to drive up there. And that's when I realized, hang on, I had already been to the supermarket when I went to the Y because I was drinking a drink that I had bought at the supermarket while at the Y. I'm like, okay, so it must be at the Y. Okay. So I'm thinking to myself, I don't want to go back to the Y. It's nighttime, it's dark. And the next day, Monday comes and goes, and I'm thinking it's probably at the Y. So I get on my phone. When they're actually now open, I call and they have my phone. But here's what happened that night. So I have my phone back. This is like the third time that I have not had a phone in the last, probably in the month of October, beginning of November. And I think God's trying to tell me something about my phone. That's just between me and him, though. So I don't have my phone. And on Sunday night, I am, it's evening. I don't watch TV. I don't watch movies. It's super inconvenient the way my Roku and my TV are set up, and I would have to do a bunch of stuff. And so I just don't watch movies. Plus, every time I've watched a movie lately, which is maybe twice in the last year, the movie has gotten in my head like way too much. And I think about it and I'm like, why am I thinking about this fake thing? So I've made a decision. I just don't watch movies anymore. I don't play video games. I don't watch TV. And so usually, I hate to say it, but usually I'm on my phone. And in order to justify being on my phone, I have two reasons to justify it. Number one, because I'm going to tell you guys what's going on, because I want to know what's going on in the world. That is actually useful. It is. I have had many times when I've said, I just wasted 3 hours, and I've gone, no, I just learned a whole lot about a particular thing that is really important that I know. So it's kind of a little bit of this and a little bit of that of being on my phone for that purpose. The other reason I'm on my phone is because I'm researching for my book, but lately I'm not really doing that either. So anyway, this night, Sunday night, I don't have anything to do because I don't have my phone. I can't call anybody. I can't have a long conversation with a friend. I can't text anybody. I can't research my book unless I want to sit down at a computer. And so what do? I went downstairs to my bookcase and I picked up a book of Plato, Plato. You know, Plato is in Socrates. Now, I've never read Plato before. I should have, because I have an Ivy League education, but they don't make you read the classics. They don't make you read any of the ancient Greeks or Romans or really anything. So I pick up the book, and I don't remember the name of the book, but the story that I began reading was called Euthyphro, Euthyphro. And I began reading for the first time in my life Plato. And Plato, the reason we know about Socrates, I don't think left any writing, but his student Plato wrote all of the Socratic conversations. And so it's through Plato that we know about Socrates. Now, I know a little bit about them, but not as much as I should. So as I'm reading this, I'm realizing that it's really easy to read. Okay, so I'm just kind of stunned. It is, maybe it's the translation I'm reading, but it's really easy to read, and it makes perfect sense, and it's interesting. So here I am turning pages, and I read maybe 20 pages of this, and then I get distracted, and I have to feed my dog and do other stuff. So, but I read 20 pages. So in my defense, as I'm being grilled, when's the last time you read a book? I'm like, well, I read Plato. When did you do that? Well, just a couple days ago, as though I'm just sitting around reading Plato all the time in my spare time in the evenings, not because I just happen to not have my phone. And anyway, so long story short, by the way, I got something massive out of reading the Plato and the Socrates that wound up playing a role a couple days later. I gave somebody some advice yesterday that came directly from Socrates that turned a corner on something really important and huge, because I was able to share some wisdom from Socrates to an individual who is involved in a big political thing. And this morning, I heard from that person that it had gone really well because of the advice. And so I was like, go Socrates, that's so cool. And of course, now my friend who had done that probably thinks I'm just sitting around reading Socrates and Plato in my spare time, which I wish I was. Okay, so now bringing all this together, the question of when was the last time you read a book, I couldn't tell you. I cannot tell you the last time I sat down and undistractedly, now here's the key, undistractedly actually read an entire book beginning to end. I didn't do it this fall. I didn't do it this summer. I don't think I did it this spring. I think the last time I did that was when I got into the Alexander McCall Smith's Ladies Detective Agency series, which has nothing to do with detectives. I don't like murders. I don't like mysteries. But that series is so full of life and love and kindness and goodness and positivity and cheerfulness and joy and everything good I can possibly say that I recommend it. In fact, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm going to go get those books and I'm going to read them again. They're in every library because they're hugely popular. There's multiple copies of each one in our tiny little library here locally. It is a great book. And if you want to read something, if you are being, if your conscience is pinging you and going, I haven't read a book either, then pick up a copy of Plato because it was really cool and easy to read, or pick up a copy of the Ladies Detective Agency series. It takes place in, is it in Rwanda, Botswana? I think it's Rwanda, Botswana. Anyway, it's an African country, and Mama Ramotwe, I'm going to get all the names wrong, but it's just a beautiful set of stories of her life living there and loving her life and loving the people and the wide sun and the little dramas of the daytime things and how she marries, her boyfriend who's a mechanic. It's just sweet. It's sweet. There's nothing dark in it. Nothing. There is no there's no, the lying that's in there is kind of on a Nancy Drew level of lying. Like it's lying just to show that lying is wrong, but there's no real evil intent. There's no evil in the book. It's just so wonderful. So we all need to do more reading. Okay, so now thinking back, taking all this full circle, thinking back to the first time I saw the World Wide Web, and I thought to myself, it would disrupt my flow of reading this page if I were to click on that link and bring up a whole nother page. Why would I want to do that? And of course, now that's all we ever do. So the thing that I was uncomfortable with back in 1993 is now the thing that I take for granted, that you never finish reading a whole page. You never take in all the information. You're always jumping around. All right, stay tuned. I'll say more about this in a minute.
At a single moment to your life, look at the birds, look at the birds, look at the birds. So wonderfully for wildflowers, he will certainly care for you. And if God cares so wonderfully for wildflowers, he will certainly care for you. Can all your worries at a single moment to your life, so don't worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will bring its own worries. Today's trouble is enough for today. Yeah, look at the birds, look at the birds. Can all your worries at a single moment. The Lord is a faithful God. Blessed are those who wait for his help. Lord is a faithful God. Blessed are those who wait for his help. He'll be gracious if you ask for help. He will surely respond to the sound of your cries. The Lord is a faithful God.
Indeed.
Blessed are those who wait for his help.
He's a faithful God. And I want to tell you one thing I've learned. When the Bible says blessed and it says who are blessed, take it to the bank. It is true. It is absolutely true. I have proven it over and over in the last couple of years that when I do the things that the Bible says are things that will make you blessed, I am blessed every single time. And the converse is also true. The things that the Bible says will cause curses really do cause curses. So it's literal. You can take it to the bank. Blessed are those who wait for his help. If you're waiting for if you need something, don't try to fix it on your own. Just wait for his help. It's true. He will tell you. Sometimes he'll tell you, do this and that, and then you do it. You don't just sit around and wait like that guy in the flood who passed up the boat and the helicopter. And when he died and said, God, I was waiting for you. And God said, I sent you a boat and a helicopter. Why didn't you use them? So it doesn't mean just sit back and just do nothing. But it does mean pray, ask for his help. All right. So I was talking about my initial response to the World Wide Web, that why would I want to be disrupted in the middle of reading a page of information with hyperlinks that would take me to another page. And if I went to the other page, would I ever get back to the first page and finish the thought? And the answer now, that was 93, 03, 13, 30 years later? The answer now, 30 years later, is no, you won't get back to the original thought, because the whole concept of how one thinks has changed when we transitioned from the era of reading to the era of hyperlinks and the internet. Now, a whole bunch of other things have changed too, but I want to make that, I just, because it occurred to me so strongly that my initial response to the World Wide Web, the Tim Berners-Lee created HTTP, HTML code that enabled us all to be on the web, that my initial response to it was prescient in a way. It was predicting where I would be here 30 years later, which is where I do not complete a thought. I don't sit down and read a whole chapter of Jacques Ellul. I do not sit down and read a whole web page from beginning to end. And I probably do more consistent reading than other people. I watch other people and they don't even want to read a 6-paragraph article. They want to go directly to, and this is the other thing that's been popping up lately, they want to go to the summary. So now that we have artificial intelligence reading, even the kind of minimal reading we do on web pages is now being replaced. So not only are we not reading books, not only are we not reading articles, now we're not only not reading web pages, but we're not really reading anything, because if there is a chunk of information, now there's a little box, and there's going to be more of these on more web pages, that says, click here for an AI summary of what this page actually even says. And so you can take what is now, one page that would have used to been a book. It's now one page, and you can get it down to 3 sentences. So AI will tell you what it says, assuming AI isn't lying to you about what it says. And that's one of AI's deep problems, is it lies like its father, the father of lies. But the summary, the wanting, and then the other thing that I'm seeing on pages is it says, click here for an audio summary of this book, of this article. So I can click for the AI version, or I can click to not even read the AI version, but to have the AI version read to me. So now I'll have a voice telling me what the article says. What is the result of all of this? It's already bearing its bad fruit. We're already seeing it. In my life, these past 30 years have caused me to read very, very few books. And it's changed the way I think. It's changed my attention span. It's changed my ability to delve deeply into one topic by one person, to have what I think the value of writing really is where you can connect with a particular intellect, a particular person's way of seeing the world, a particular individual, an actual human being who wrote a book. And you can connect with that person in the same way that you could connect with a professor or a friend over a meal or have a deep conversation. But we no longer approach writing in that way. I remember when I would sit down, one of my favorite, I was probably really pretentious as a teenager, but one of my favorite books in my pretentious teenage years was 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. And he won the Nobel Prize for Literature. It is a pretentious book, and even more pretentiously, I was reading it in Spanish. because I lived in Mexico for a while and I fancied myself being really good. I'm now fluent in Spanish, but at the time I was actually practicing my Spanish by reading Cien Años de Soledad by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. And here was me and my little, 16, 17-year-old me, pretentiously reading my Spanish version of this book. But even then, I was engaged. I read that book probably 5 times. I know all the characters. I know all the story. And I feel like on some level, Gabriel Garcia Marquez and I, we're kind of old buds. We're kind of pals. I've never met the guy, but I certainly have spent more time with him than I have with a whole lot of other people I've met in person because I read what he had to say. The same thing is true for C.S. Lewis. I've read quite a bit of C.S. Lewis back in my reading days. I have read his fiction. I have read his nonfiction. I have read his lectures. I've given a lot of thought to what C.S. Lewis had to say, and I feel like I know him. That's not a thing we do anymore. We don't, if I think about the 70 books I've downloaded, I don't know any of those authors. I don't have a connection with them. And so no longer do we sit down to say, I'm going to read some Dostoevsky, or I'm going to read Anna Karenina, and I'm going to spend 3 days with Leo Tolstoy and understand something. We don't do that anymore. What we do instead is we might, if you're me on Anna's archive, you might download Anna Karenina. You might flip through and look for the part that's relevant for the book you're writing, but you're not going to sit down and connect with that author. So we have a very different, more utilitarian way of thinking about writing, a more utilitarian way of thinking about just the written word in general. And yet, all right, now here's the thing, and yet we're willing to spend hours and hours binging a Netflix series. I don't do that anymore, but I can tell you way more television programs that I have binge watched than books I've read in the last 10 years. I can. Back before I decided I was going to watch TV, and it got hard to watch my TV because of the connection and the Roku, and I just said, it's fine, good riddance. But back before that, I binge watched a couple of series, and so I know what it's like to binge watch a show. I mean, you are home on a Saturday, maybe it's snowing out, and you have nothing better to do, and you just curl up, and for 10 hours, you're just clicking next, you're watching the show, and you're engaging in visual content, and you don't know what's coming next. You have no idea. They could put anything in your head. Why was I not spending those 10 hours reading a book? Well, because a book isn't as gratifying. It's not as instant. It's not as whatever. It doesn't have the same pizzazz. Reading a book is like eating a meal as opposed to eating fast food, as opposed to eating popcorn and an ice cream cone. And so we are filling our minds with fast food. We're filling our minds with junk food. We're filling our minds with the stuff you would buy in the mini mart and 7-Eleven. And we're eating in immense quantities of it, hours and hours of it. Most people are watching tons of Netflix and tons of videos. So what does it mean? All right, now let me go over here to a couple articles. Brain activity is lower for writers who use AI. You think? And the sky is blue and gravity makes things fall to the ground. Okay, obviously brain activity would be lower for writers that use AI because writers who use AI aren't writing. They're asking AI to write, and they're just entering the prompt and getting back some feedback. And as we saw the other day with that writer for Dawn, the Turkish? Pakistani, I don't know, that newspaper, who even left the little AI prompt at the end of the article about car sales in, I want to say Pakistan. Even reporters aren't even writing their own content. So obviously brain activity would be lower. A couple of articles, these are just headlines from startpage.com, my search engine of choice. Why even basic AI use is so bad for students, New York Times. Let's see, I think they did a survey last year, this is a year ago, and found that 90% of students admitted to using artificial intelligence for their homework. AI, ChatGPT, is now the 5th most visited website in the world. It is way up there. Pupils fear AI is eroding their ability to study. So even students are starting to say, this isn't good. Here's another one. Is AI making us lazy? Here's another one. The decline of literacy and the rise of AI. Got another one. Students aren't writing anymore. Now this one kills me. This is Forbes. Students aren't writing well anymore. Can AI help? You think? Why don't we just pour some gasoline to put out that fire? 50%, I'll read this article from Forbes, that's the approximate number of students in 8th grade who struggle with long-form writing on tests and classwork that involves reading. This is dated May of last year, so this article is already a year and a half old. So it's a colleague of mine studying reading data collected in 2022 found that fewer than half of 8th graders write long answers to questions on tests and assignments that involve reading. While people may put a premium on the notion of short and sweet when it comes to reading and writing, doing so at formative ages like 8th grade means young learners will not build the skills they need to convey and explain ideas and information. And then it says, it's got lots of tips on how students learn such things. But then it says, we need to use AI. We need to use AI to get students, writing. I'm optimistic AI will be a deep help to students to support their long-term writing ability. Yeah, I don't think so. That was a year and a half ago, though. What did they know? All right, I'll be right back.
Look at the birds. Look at the birds. I tell you not to worry about everyday life. I tell you not to worry about everyday life. Can all your worries add a single moment to your life? Look at the birds. Look at the birds. Look at the birds. Look at the birds. And if God cares so wonderfully for wildflowers, He will certainly care for you. And if God cares so wonderfully for wildflowers, He will certainly. Our city's strong, we're surrounded by the walls of God's salvation. Open the gates to all who are righteous. Allow the faithful to enter. You will keep in perfect peace all that trust in you and all whose thoughts are fixed on you. Trust in the Lord always. Trust in the Lord always. Trust in the Lord always. For the Lord God is the eternal rock.
So I'm looking up research out of the Harvard Graduate School of Education, my alma mater, and Professor Thomas Kane recently did an interview with PBS that I'm looking at right here. In fact, let me post you the link. Here it is on YouTube. Doobie-doobie-doo. And here it is in my chat room. All right, so there's the link to the article, What Has Caused Reading Scores to Drop to the Worst Point in Decades? Now, I do not need to even read the article or the interview with him to know the answer to that. Nobody's reading. Nobody is reading anymore. I remember when I was a high school student, even a junior high school student, we read books, and we read lots of books. When I was at Harvard, we read books. We read lots of books. I have in my lifetime read many, many books. Longtime listeners to my show know that back when I was broadcasting before my 7-year hiatus, that I had 6,000 books. I owned 6,000 books. I had bookcases. I had a whole room lined with bookcases, floor to ceiling. I had 6,000 books. That's because in that part of New Hampshire, we had to take our own garbage to the dump. We didn't have trash pickup. And there was a section of our dump over to the side that was the kind of like the, giveaway thrift store kind of place. And there was a big table of books. And I mean, there were probably 500 books on that table. And when I got too many books, I would just gather up the ones I didn't want to read anymore, kind of treated it like a library. I would take them over and dump them off. And then I would bring home sacks of books from there. And these would be top quality, really, really good condition books. And some of them, most of them, I would wind up keeping. So by the end, I had 6,000 books. I'm not kidding. I'm not exaggerating. 6,000. I think my oldest son read all of them too. So he's the most educated person I know and has the most knowledge of anyone I know because he actually read all the books. And that created a hunger and a habit in him to read lots more books. So he's probably read 10 times more than that now. So that was my life back when I used to do the show. Now I don't own a lot of books. I've moved. I don't, most of the things I want to find, I can just download. But when you download a book, you don't sit down and read it. That's the thing. This is just now occurring to me. I have a Kindle. I've had a couple of Kindles or Amazon. It's a Kindle and then the other one, I don't even know. I have a couple of those little e-readers. And I put a book on there and I read like 2 pages. I'm like, oh, this sucks. I grew up, I was the mega bookworm as a kid. I've told this story before. We had a library probably 6 blocks from home, and I would pedal down there on my little bike, my little purple, it wasn't an any speed bike, it was just a plain old bike. And I had a basket on the front, and I would go to the library and I would I would gauge how many books I could check out by how many I could fit in the basket on my bike. And I would read them all. And a couple days later, I'd go back and do it again. By the time this was in Southern California. By the time I had done that for 2 or 3 years, I had read every book in the library. I was starting in on the adult books, and I was not, adult books, but I mean the grown-up section, and reading histories and biographies when I was in 5th grade. So I was a bookworm. I was the mega reader. I always won the prize. In fact, I stopped applying because I felt so bad because I would have like 500 books read and I would always win. And then the next person down would have like 12 books read. And I started feeling kind of guilty. So I stopped entering the little contest at my library of who had read the most books. So I grew up reading. I was a bookworm. That was the phrase we used to have. Who uses the phrase bookworm anymore? Who would be a bookworm among our elementary and middle school students nowadays? Anybody? No. It's just not. You'd be a phone addict, but not a bookworm. And that was someone who always had their nose in a book, which was me as a kid. I attribute a lot of my ability to speak, a lot of my ability to form sentences, to form thoughts. Now, there's even more important, my ability to follow a thread of thinking and form a thought from that early exposure to the English language, to the way thoughts and sentences and words and ideas are constructed, to the way that a narrative in fiction would flow, or to the way that a nonfiction book would introduce a topic and then break it down into chapters. This is information you take for granted if you've done a lot of reading. But if you haven't done any reading and all you've done is flip through stupid TikTok videos and YouTube shorts and looked at the AI summary of the 2-page articles that you're expected to read, how are you going to know anything? How are you going to know how writing even is supposed to work? And so it's not a surprise to me that reading scores have dropped because nobody reads. It's not surprising to me that writing ability is almost non-existent nowadays among our young people, because when do they have to write other than, using their thumbs to text with the letter U for the word you and some emojis and not any punctuation, because if you put punctuation in your text, it's rude. And if you capitalize apparently in your text, according to my daughter that can make you look kind of stilted. So it's almost a badge of cool to not punctuate, not spell correctly, not put any grammar in the only text that you're even writing in the first place, which is the only writing you're doing, which is text. Nowadays, nobody writes cursive. Anyway, so I'm just thinking back to my early first response to this thing that has wound up being, it held such high promise for the education, for the deepening of the human mind, for the idea that us literate people back then, which was all of us, that we would have access to everything. We could access all the literature. Little did we realize that the access to all of the information would make us stupid. It didn't even occur to any of us. It's just like having the GPS. I couldn't tell you, if you took away my GPS, I couldn't get to half the places I go. I literally couldn't get there because rather than pay attention to where I'm going, I'm not thinking to myself, okay, I got to memorize this route like I used to. Now I'm just, blah, 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 listening to my Bible app or listening to Project of Love or talking to somebody on my speakerphone, and I'm paying literally no attention at all to where I'm going. In fact, recently, this was 2 days ago, I was driving, actually I did a couple-hour drive, and I had the volume button off on my GPS, and it didn't tell me to change freeways, and I was like honking 10 miles down the wrong freeway before I looked up and went, oh my God, and you see your GPS, and it's got the blue line goes up and then swoops around back, and you're like, oh, what have I done? And I look down, and I've added 25 minutes to my route. So this is what's happening to us. And what are we doing with the time we're saving from the reading? We're watching Netflix. We're filling our minds with stupidity, with theatricality. I did that show on Halloween on anti-theatricality. So what is my point here? So let me see if I can summarize what I've been saying here. Is the one night that I didn't have my phone, I was driven pretty much against my will to pick up a book. And when I did, I picked up Plato, of all books, just going, I've never read Plato, and this has been sitting on my shelf. And I sat down to read it, expecting it to be kind of interesting, but sort of more interesting from a I wonder what this is like, or what's the meta message of here. And I found myself getting engaged in the actual story and understanding it, finding it cool, learning something from it that 2 days later wound up making a major change in an actual political event going on here in my county in a huge way. Had I not read that wouldn't have happened. And I thought to myself, I need to do more of this. And then 2 days later, I wind up in a big debate where I'm getting challenged. You don't even read, Catherine. I'm like, I've downloaded 75 books for my book. I'm writing a book. What do you mean? And then I realized, no, I actually don't read. I don't read. And I have plenty of time to read. I do. I have all the time in the world to read because what am I doing? I'm on my phone doing other stuff for a couple hours a day. And so probably are you. So what are we doing with our time? And more importantly, what are we doing with the tracks our minds run down? Because if you spend 3 hours, as often happens to me, where you go to look up one thing, and one thing leads to, just like I feared in 1993, that as I was reading one thing, I'd click on a thing and then I'd go off to another thing. It's like an ADHD paradise. It's like an ADHD nightmare. It is the rates of ADHD in our society have skyrocketed. Some people say it's because we have better diagnostic tools and we're now acknowledging that adults can have ADHD. But I would add to that the very nature of the way in which we are pursuing information is ADHD. It is actually, ADHD is the inability to follow a thought, or the difficulty. I have ADHD, and I have real ADHD from long before this, even when I read books. But it is the struggling to take one thought and simply persevere along a single thought without jumping off onto other thought. Wait, look, a squirrel. Hang on. Did you see that? Right, like that. So if you cannot read, just like in 1993, I'm looking at this page and I'm thinking, if I click that, and maybe my own ADHD brain was saying, that's going to mess me up. It has. And it's not only messed me up, because I actually have ADHD, but it's messed up people who didn't used to have ADHD, but now do. Because we cannot sit down and follow not just even a page from beginning to end, much less. And I see, by the way, on YouTube, the average amount of time people listen to my show is like 7 minutes. So you guys can't even listen to my show. I probably couldn't even do my entire show if I weren't here responsible for doing my whole show. I'd probably go, look, a squirrel, I'll be right back. So it's awful. We have really, really changed the way we think. We have changed the way we process information. And we're a generation that knows better. But what about these kids? All right, we got to be thinking more about this. All right, something I'm going to be praying about, thinking about, and I am going to make a point of reading books and actually putting my phone in a different room, far, far away from me, because that was great. At least I'm going to do it a couple nights a week. All right, thanks for listening. All right, God bless you guys.
Reasons